Welcome to a new episode of Parenting and You with me, Dr. Shefali. In this episode, we are going to be talking about the most common emotion we parents feel. It's guilt. Guilt can eat us up from the inside and erode our connection with our children. I have countless memories where guilt totally consumed me and messed me up. Each time I thought I was doing something bad with my child or not being amazing enough, I was consumed by guilt until I learned to release myself from it. In this episode, we're going to get to the root of why we feel guilty and what we can do about it. Up next is a mother who's battling tremendous guilt because her son is punching, kicking, and biting. If there's one emotion that most mothers especially know all too well, it's mother guilt. You know, we so want to do it perfectly for our children. And then when things fall apart, we are consumed and burdened by this crippling sense of, I didn't do it good enough, or this sense of failure and guilt, especially when our children are young and they're throwing tantrums one after the other. No one said parenting was easy, did they? Well, we're going to meet Leila now. Leila is a mother of two. She's currently pregnant with her third child, and she's really up in arms because her 4-year-old, she says, punches, kicks, and even bites, and she doesn't know what to do about it. So let's see if we can help her. Hi, Leila. How are you? Thank you for being here.
Hi, Dr. Shefali.
Tell us about your core struggle with this 4-year-old.
My son, he has his tantrums. It often happens when he's feeling definitely overtired or disconnected from me. And usually the disconnection is when I'm feeling overstimulated, overwhelmed, have a lot going on, and I'm not quite as present. It'll come out with whining. And then oftentimes he'll have difficulty following directives. And then there's like a collapse that happens. And that will include yelling. And then if he's not able to, or if I'm not able to help him regulate in that moment, then it will lead to hitting. And sometimes biting will happen. It doesn't happen towards me, the biting part. It'll be my husband or his younger sibling, my daughter. And a lot of the aggression is more towards her when he is feeling these challenges.
And I'm sure that's so triggering for you because you're trying to protect her, you're trying to help him. Yeah, this is such a ubiquitous phenomenon in our early children's lives, because when they're dealing with siblings especially, it's like they turn into these, unrecognizable human beings, and they are struggling so much to cope with their displacement. I always say the older child has been displaced, right? They've been dethroned and they're no longer, in the king's seat. And somebody's come into their kingdom like an invader. And now you're pregnant with your third one. So he is sensing that he's getting even further and further away from his country, his homeland, which is mommy. Mommy is now full of these invaders who are taking her time and her attention, and he's feeling the lack of that connection. He is telling you, hey, this is my territory and I am possessive, and somebody is coming in and just taking over. And that's why our older siblings are particularly vicious to the younger siblings. And now we are caught in the storm, right? We don't know what to do because we have to protect the younger one. But then we end up yelling at the older one, expecting the older one to be amazing. And then the older one goes, see, I knew it. She loves the younger one more than me. I am losing my place here. I'm not loved. I'm not seen. And I always tell parents with siblings who are 2-3 years apart, you think you need to protect the younger one, and that's correct. But the attention, the focus, the connection needs to be more directed toward the older one, because the older one is the one who has to adjust. You see, the younger one comes into the dynamic already set up. The older one is feeling the contrast and therefore feeling the lack. It's like the older one was living in a home where there was only Spanish being spoken, and then all of a sudden we began speaking English. So the younger ones who come into the house where English is being spoken, that's easier for them. But the older one is like, hey, what about Spanish? Hey, what about me? So that's what's happening at a nonverbal level, at an emotional level. But you are, hormonal, you're stressed, you're overwhelmed, and then you're guilty because you know somewhere, like every mother knows, that they're not giving that firstborn the same attention, and you're feeling guilty. And because you're feeling guilty, you want him even more to be happier. So every time he's not happy, your guilt kicks in even more, and then you're in this vicious cycle. Talk about your mom guilt in those moments when you see him unhappy and kind of expressing some jealousy or ownership.
I feel like I really connect with what you say. As it was like a week after we brought my daughter home from the hospital, he started hitting her on the head while I was nursing her.
Exactly.
Continued since then, and we've had periods where it's been better and worse. I feel like there's only so much of me to give as a mom, and I am split in so many different directions.
Yes.
And so I work part-time. I take care of these two kids and the household. And I just feel like the guilt comes with like, there's not enough of me, and that like I could be doing, like I should, I guess.
Yes.
Like I should be doing more.
Yes.
And I could be doing better. And then what ends up happening is I may overcompensate. And I do feel like he's a deeply sensitive child.
Yes.
And I do feel like he does recognize when that guilt comes in, and it does play. It's like another person in our dynamic almost.
Yes. Wow. That's so impressive that you can identify when you become guilty and then he becomes a different person, because you too are operating out of this false self, right? This guilty self, which is not your authentic, connected, flowing, empowered self. It's this other self. And I think every mother out there, mothers especially, can relate to this. So I really want our listeners to cue in even more. When we feel guilty, it's like the guilt overtakes us and makes us unrecognizable. We're no longer connected. Now we're operating from guilt. Guilt does two things to us. One, it can unleash a rage because we're feeling so bad, extra bad about, not giving our best. So now we're feeling so guilty, and then the guilt triggers this rage, like, what do you want me to do? I can't do any better. And if only you were better, then I'd be better, kind of energy, right? So you're coming at your children with that energy. Or guilt, so one is anger, and then the other thing what guilt does is make us overcompensate in terms of indulging our children. Okay, just take the iPad. Okay, just take the candy. Okay, we'll go out for dinner. And you give in too much. And both these polarities create this unending cycle. So the key here is not so much your child, it's how your guilt is overriding your true presence and connection. And in those moments, you are feeling overburdened. So let's go one layer deeper into this mother guilt, because I think so many women are going to relate. Underneath the guilt is this sense of perfectionism or overachievement. And you're smiling now as soon as I said that. So what's coming up for you when I use the word perfectionist? Is that you?
I think it's certain parts of my life. It's kind of like this all or nothing. And when it comes to parenthood, it's
yes,
everything.
Right.
And it's all-consuming.
Yes.
I feel like it should be a certain way, and I could always be doing better. And it's never,
Never good enough. Exactly. But that's it. And that's what is feeding your mother guilt. That's what's feeding it. It's not the fact that you're even so burdened, which you are, by the way, you're overscheduled. But now you have this unrelenting inner perfectionist that is pushing you, driving you, that you need to do it all. Listen, you have a part-time job. Right now, where you are in your time zone, it's 7 o'clock. And if people could see you, you look like you could walk a runway. Okay. You look perfect. You are an overachiever. I can tell. You have 2 children, one on the way, right? You are trying to do it all and get an A++ grade in parenting. So then when you see your children act out, when you see the older one be a little mean to the younger one, which by the way, are normal emotions, normal feelings. But inside you, it makes you feel like you're not good enough. So then you remove your anger at your older son too, right? You try to over micromanage or control him. Then he gets this sense that he's not good enough. Then he takes it out on his younger sibling. This is the vicious cycle of too much stress, too much burden of achievement and doing too many things. You're a mother of 2, which is hard enough, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old. You have number 3 on its way, right? Take any one of those, that's a cause of high stress. Then you're trying to do a part-time career and you're trying to feel good and successful. Then you're trying to take the kids to activities, cook them healthy food. You live in LA, which is a high-pressured, a lot of comparison going on for the mother. So put it all together in a pressure cooker and you have a real bubbling, volcano about to erupt. So what you need to do, mommy, and this is for all mothers out there, you have to reevaluate your life. You have to downsize. You have to let go of something because your older child is telling you, hey, there's not enough for me. I need special connection. I need you to realize that my world has been thrown into topsy-turvy. You went ahead and had another child when I was just 2 years old. That's when, let me tell you, Leila, most children need their parents the most when they're around 2 years old. So imagine you were pregnant with your second. You had a real child at 2. His needs at 2 were the highest for early childhood. And that's when there was a big disruption, a big rupture. So we need to slow down. If we want the next 6 years to be more flowing, we need to slow down in the first 6 years of our children's lives. So downsize, clear up your schedule. What can you take out now with child number 3 coming? You cannot go at this speed. I mean, something's going to have to give. So either it's your career or it's your perfectionism or it's, activities for your children. Because what a child needs, and I keep reminding us parents every episode, what our children need is a mother who is connected, a mother who is joyful, a mother who is feeling confident. And right now, because you're spread too thin, you're not feeling confident. You're agitated. And that is what your child is picking up.
I feel like that's definitely accurate. I recognize, and I was thinking of what can I let go? And that's the big challenge that I come across. And it's reflecting on just the past 2 weeks. I was my son was on spring break and I let go of everything. I told my clients, no, I'm taking time off. We took a vacation. We were just spending time at home. And it was this different level of connection. There was maybe one moment of dysregulation that was overwhelming for us all. And that was it. But there's this joy and this ease.
Exactly.
Reflect on I was able to just kind of let go, let go of the mess, just be here. And I'm trying to figure out how do I bring this into our everyday life, especially with this, my 3rd baby coming in July.
Oh my goodness. So
down.
pretty soon. So here's another suggestion. If we cannot change things on the outside because of work or, whatever our obligations are, that's something that you can always work on. But here's something you can start today. You have to let go this unrelenting desire to be perfect, to do it all well. So when a moment of meltdown does happen, you're not looking at it as, oh, a bad day, or a C grade day, or, oh, I'm failing as a mother. Instead, lean into those moments of dysregulation and allow yourself to say, oh, this is a chance, an opportunity for me to connect, for me to, stop everything, be present, and give my child what they need. Because that's what your child is saying when they're kicking, punching, screaming, biting. What they are saying is, Mommy, drop everything. I need help. I need you. Please come and give me your gaze. Come to my level. Hold me. Show me that you're present. I need to feel safe. I'm not feeling safe right now. But instead, when we parents have this perfectionism, we look at it going, oh my goodness, you're ruining another moment. You're making this a really bad day. And why are you messing up all our energy and our time? So you're coming at it as if it's a failure versus coming at it with, it's another reminder. Put my phone down, take a moment, and let me give my child what they need. So I think most of our issues come from within us, right? How we interpret the present moment. And I think because you're such a people pleaser and an achiever and a good girl and a superhuman, you want to come to every moment and every day like that. But then when there are glitches, you take it really personally. So let go of that and instead realize my son just needs my attention. He's not a bad kid. I'm not a bad mother. He just needs my attention. If you could just reframe it, then that enormous mother guilt you feel will subside and you will be easy on yourself. The hardest person on you is you.
Yeah.
The one who is kicking and screaming and having a tantrum is really you.
Right.
Right? Internally. So let go of that mother guilt. It's a burden that is really disrupting your ability to connect with your child.
Yeah, and I think being able to let go of the labels and what I should and shouldn't be doing, and with dysregulation, like instead of moving away, move towards.
Exactly.
I'm hearing move towards him, find connection in those moments, which is really challenging, but look at what's underneath it versus what's on the surface of it all and my own disruption and feelings that come up, which I think I'm pretty aware of. It's just hard in those moments. But I think having this different level of awareness of lean in can help me kind of just step out of the perfectionism and the guilt.
Absolutely. So let's just go over the three takeaways I think that you just said. So number one, when those moments of dysregulation happen, instead of looking at it as a moment of failure or as a moment to control or as a moment to run away, we look at it as our child inviting us to connect. Number two, our own need to have a picture perfect day, to give ourselves a A++, that need needs to be let go of because that trips us up, right? Because we are always feeling like we need to achieve a perfect day for our children. Instead, our children and we are allowed to have glitches. We're allowed to have meltdowns. We're allowed to have dysregulation. And it doesn't mean we are bad parents. And the last thing, which is the most important thing, is that there is nothing greater you can give your children, especially your needy children, your tantruming children, but your understanding that they are not bad people. They're just having a hard moment. And if you can just remember these takeaways and implement them in the present moment, then your children will flourish and so will you. So thank you so much, Leila, for sharing. Thank you for your patience and being so honest and transparent.
Thank you.
Coming up next, I'm going to be talking to a mother whose 13-year-old daughter bullies her 10-year-old son, and it absolutely breaks her heart. What do we do when our children fight with each other, when they are mean to each other, and we feel so helpless not knowing how to stop it? Joining me now is Miriam. She's going to be talking about her struggles trying to end the fighting between her two children. Hello, Miriam. I know you've been having a hard time, so tell us about it.
Hi, Dr. Shefali. Well, thank you for having me today. Yes, this has been an ongoing struggle for me as a mom. And I think for both of us, my husband and myself, both have struggled with this. So I'm so happy that you're addressing it today. I have a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old. My older child is a girl, my daughter. As children get into fights, as they should, I guess, like most children do, they do too, but sometimes we feel like it's taken to a different level, unequal distribution of power between them, especially when they were younger. And so we ended up taking the side of the younger child unintentionally. Really, sometimes it was very unintentional. And so that it aggravated my daughter even more. And so that meanness would come out even more. And then what I would do is, intervene, stop the fight. But then I would start to go down that spiral of, oh my gosh, now I'm thinking mean thoughts about my own daughter, and I really don't want to do that. And then the guilt and shame that came with it, and then the overcompensation that sometimes came with it. So it was, when they were growing up, when they were younger, it was a more vicious cycle. Right now it's a little bit better as they're growing up, but we're still struggling with it.
Okay, thank you so much for explaining so clearly. So let's go back and tell me about your relationship with your daughter in her early years. And what was that relationship like? Did she trigger you? How was it back then?
Yeah, Dr. Shefali, I think you know better than anybody, having written all these books, where what an illusion we're in when we have our firstborn child, and I was no exception. I had totally drunk out of the Kool-Aid, and it was that perfectionism, really, and wanting things to be a particular way would always create struggles between us. Even before my second child was born, even when she was under the age of 3. But it was an extreme, this is the bedtime, this is now you got to shower, now you have to wear this dress and not the other. So it was a huge learning curve as I grew up. And then somewhere along the way, I read one of your books and watched a YouTube video of you. And I'm like, who's this woman? I need to learn more about how to become a better parent, or at least a more conscious one. And so, so the struggle was there ever since she was little. She's a very strong-willed child, highly sensitive and strong-willed. And then it kind of like after my second child was born, I guess the dynamics of our home changed, and it was difficult for her to accept the whole thing. She was very vocal about it. So it was very confusing to me. And then eventually, as they grew older, the power struggle that was between myself and her turned into between her and the younger child. And it just continued. It just continued the same way.
Exactly. So you just said it, right? Our children recreate what they feel toward others. So the power struggle she felt with you is what she began to recreate in her dynamic with her sibling. And that's what our children are so good at doing. They almost mimic us to the key, right? To the point. And then they begin showing us how we have been to them. I still remember, Miriam, a moment in my own motherhood where my daughter literally threw something down and, she cursed. And I was so shocked that she was like 6 years old. I was like, how did she even know how to do that? And then I quickly realized she saw me just a few weeks ago do that when I was upset. And I didn't even know that she was watching. They pick up how we manage our emotions, how we are toward them. And then they mimic that and recreate that power dynamic. So what you're saying is really important for all of us parents to realize. You were dominating her when she was a child. You were controlling her. because your own sense of perfectionism was ruling the dynamic, right? You wanted things a certain way. And she wasn't doing it because she's a strong-willed child. So there comes the power struggle, and you two were caught in this conflict. And now, because her power was taken away, because she knows that she didn't make mommy happy and she didn't have power, now she's sitting with helplessness. And now she's looking around her life and she's going, who can I power trip over? Who can I boss around? Right? That's how bullies in the schoolyard are created, because they feel helpless because they're bullied at home. So then they need to execute some power. So they look for someone to reenact that bullying situation. So this is what your child is doing with her younger sibling. So the key to unravel this is not to stop her from being a bully or anyone on the outside. It's for us mommies and daddies to look within us to our own inner bully, right? So you just said, let's make it really concrete for everyone. You just said, when you look at her, you look at her as the bad one, right? You label her. You don't want to label her, but automatically you do, and you protect the younger one. So that gives her the feeling, oh, she's the bad one, he's the good one, correct? You have a slightly more softer view toward the younger one. So that makes her feel even worse, right? Number two, you said in her growing years, you were this perfectionist and you were operating out of this need to be amazing and you were controlling her. So that's also your inner bully coming out. And then number three, you felt guilt and shame. You felt really bad about what you did. And you perhaps then overindulged, right? Overcompensated, which then set the cycle going again. So people need to realize, and you do too, that it's our sense of perfectionism that drives the guilt or the anger. And you've been oscillating between guilt or anger, right? And how do we break that cycle? So the first thing I want you to do is try to become aware. How do you project yourself onto her? Meaning, how do you see yourself in her? What part of you do you see in her? Because that identification is causing you to micromanage and control your child. And this happens very much in the same sex parent and child. So in the mother and the daughter, in the father and the son. So you're seeing yourself in her and you're trying to control the parts of you that you see in her that you don't like, right? So perhaps Perhaps you were never allowed to be strong-willed. Perhaps you were never allowed to be, outspoken. So when you see her doing things that you were not allowed to do, you're trying to control her. But you can reflect and tell me, what parts of you do you see in her that you don't like, that you're trying to control?
Right. Growing up, I do remember that I was encouraged to be kind by my parents. And most of our parents. And I could care less about being kind to particular people or like to show some kindness. I don't think I was mean in my heart to them, but like that conventional sense of kindness that you may want to see from a little girl coming out and, showing to maybe other kids around or even adults was not I always told myself, this is not an innate trait in me. I really have to cultivate it in myself. And then as I grew older, like I want to say maybe in my late teens and 20s, I made it a mission to like intentionally be kinder, because what the heck, and who's this mean, right? And so that word mean and the word kind always had this baggage with it for me.
Oh my goodness, let's just stop for a second. It's so important for you to recognize that connection, because now those are the words you're using for your daughter, right? So somewhere in your childhood, you were an authentic child. We all had more authenticity inside us, where if we didn't like someone, we didn't think it was wrong to just not be nice to that person or just not talk to that person. But you see, as girls especially, we are socialized to be quote unquote kind, right? Good little girls. So you protested against that. Even as a child, you didn't want to be a fake, good girl. You wanted to be authentic, but you were shamed for being your authentic self. And you were told, you got to be perfect. You got to be good. You got to be kind, even if you're faking it. And because you were shamed for it, You learn to put on the mask of this super kind, appropriate, socialized, good girl. Okay, beautiful. So now you have this daughter who is almost like how you used to be.
Absolutely.
And that triggers you, doesn't it?
It does, because I think the like the underneath, the underlying layer is that I sometimes tell myself, or I used to tell myself when she was younger and before I just read all of your books and listened to everything I could and tried to change something in the dynamics. This is when she was younger. I told myself, I'm struggling through this my entire life of like, how come everybody is just kind? And I'm like, even as an adult, I'm like, no, I just have to put an effort into being kind sometimes. And I was like, this is really difficult. Like, I wish that was instilled in me since I was younger. Well, that's not true. Like, I couldn't have done that any different way that it just panned out in my life. I just had to learn my lessons and, mature in some ways. And then the kindness had to somehow cultivate in some way and come out of me. But I have blind spots when the trigger happens. My brain goes directly to, no, you got to be kinder. You're going to have a very difficult life if you cannot be kind to people.
Yes, because when you see her showing the same traits that you were shamed for, you're trying to, quote unquote, protect her. And you're like, don't be mean. But then you end up being mean, you see? But then you end up being shaming just like you were shamed. So now she is thinking, I'm just being authentic. I don't want to share my toys. I don't like my younger brother in my space. I don't want you to, force me to play with him. And now I'm being shamed for those authentic feelings. You see how we do this to our children. What was shamed in us, we suppress. When it shows up in our children, we try to suppress it in our children. And that's what you've been doing because you're so scared of your authentic self, because you've been shamed for your authentic self. When you see your child daring to be authentic, you're kind of suppressing that and shaming her. Now you've labeled her as the unkind one, as the mean one, from your own guilt, right? From your own guilt about your own authenticity from childhood, because you thought you were a mean child and you're so guilty about that and you're trying to be perfect now. You're trying to do the same with her. You're making her feel guilty. You're labeling her as mean and you're trying to make her the perfect good girl. And guess what? She's not having it. She's like, nope. I'm not going to play your game. She's waking you up. That's what our children do. They wake us up and say, I'm not going to do perfect for you because you want to be perfect. I want to be me. And the more mean you are to her, because believe it or not, you're actually being mean to her.
Right. That's true.
She carries that energy to her younger sibling. So the intervention here is to recognize the repetition of your pattern. But here's the second intervention. In those moments, I want you to reframe her being mean and telling her, don't be mean, to understanding she is feeling powerless. She is feeling, she's feeling like she needs more autonomy. She needs to be seen. She needs to be connected. Take her aside in those moments and go, hey, I see you. I know you're not trying to be mean. I know you just are feeling helpless right now. How can I help you? Right? Instead of in those moments jumping in to protect your younger one and calling the older one bad or mean in whatever ways you do, right? We don't do it directly, but we do it indirectly. Take her aside and go, hey, I know that you're feeling like he's annoying you. I know you're feeling like you're losing control or power. I see you're frustrated. Let me help you. Mommy's got your back. I know you don't mean to be like this. Let me help you. What if that message had been given to you as a child? Hey, you're not trying to be mean. You're just trying to express something very dear to you. You're just trying to be authentic. I see you. Then you would have not felt so much shame about your own authenticity. So that's the missing link between you and your daughter. And she senses your constant disapproval of her. And she's so mad that she's blaming her younger sibling. She's thinking that all her problems come from him. but they really come from mommy's old inner child and shame.
That is so true. I mean, I think you had a conversation with my daughter prior to this meeting, which you didn't, but like the way you explained everything is so much similar to what the words that, even the words that you use, because she always been very vocal about it. She's like, you always make me the mean one. She has said that before. This is humiliating. She said that before. And she, like, the last thing she wants is shame and humiliation. She doesn't do well with shame. And when we inadvertently shame her, this is like the worst thing I think I've ever done to either one of my children. But I've done that and I own it. But in the past few years, I've been trying to repair that. So the relationship between me and her is for the most part repaired because of the because of your teachings and what you have demonstrated in, like, just when there's a power struggle, drop the rope, get in tuned with your child, and all of that. The dynamics between me and her has improved a lot. Now I'm focused on, wait a minute, I still get triggered when this happens between the two of them.
Right. But what's being triggered now, you need to realize, is your old part in you that you disowned. That part that was authentic, that was trying to be real and was trying to be vocal. But that part was so suppressed and shamed for that now when you see her be vocal, her be outspoken, you feel even more triggered because you're trying to protect her from those feelings and your son. And then you end up shaming her. So the shame cycle continues generation after generation. I think with this new perspective, with this shift in your understanding, because you're realizing, oh, I'm disowning her, I'm discarding her, I'm shaming her because those were the parts that I disowned, I discarded, and I shamed within myself. Once you make that shift, it's going to make a huge difference because you're going to now pause and now attune to her. So thank you so much for sharing. I know this was hard and we went to a deep place, but I hope it'll help you on your journey.
Thank you, Dr. Shefali. It sure will. That's my mission now. I'm going to focus on those moments and not let myself forget as much as I can. You helped me a lot, so I'm always and truly grateful to you. You're like, I feel like I'm sitting with Oprah right now, like the same feeling you had with Oprah. But like what you did put me on a journey where I became a life coach. And then I started reaching out to parents who had younger children and helping them. So just really on behalf of myself and all the clients I've ever helped, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
What we heard today is something that is so common in so many mothers' journeys. And I say mothers in particular because I think this happens more to little girls than perhaps boys, but it could apply to everyone. When we are trained as little girls to be good little girls, to be kind little girls, to be perfect, what happens then is that we are taught to suppress other parts of us, our more vocal parts, our more daring, our more brassy and bratty parts, or our more outgoing or extroverted, or the parts that don't feel so convenient to our parents. We're told to suppress that. And we feel some kind of shame around being too out there, too authentic to ourselves. So all those parts in us, we disown, we discard, we suppress, we shove it down deep into our psyche. Now, when we have children and they begin to be loud or outspoken or brassy or bratty or brash, authentic to themselves, when they don't care to be good or perfect or socialized or appropriate, oh my goodness, it triggers all the rage and frustration within us because we've been holding ourselves hostage, you see? So when we see them be free in the parts that we have held hostage within ourselves, we lose it because we are trying now to suppress in them all that we have suppressed within ourselves. The other day, a mother came to me and she said to me, I'm so sick of my child. My child is not outgoing. My child is so shy. My child is an introvert, and I'm so tired of my child hiding in corners and not playing with other kids. And she went on and on about her child who was so shy. And guess what happened? When I took her back to her childhood, to a painful memory in her childhood, you guessed it, it was about her being shamed by her mother because she was shy, because she was not outgoing, because she wasn't participating in the school activities, and her mother was yelling at her. And my client had completely blocked it from her conscious awareness. So she was doing now to her shy child what was being done to her. This is what we do. The parts in ourselves that we disavow, that we discard, that we disown, when we see it show up in our children, we seek to suppress it in them. And we don't even realize it. So our own sense of perfectionism, our own sense of guilt that we should be better, we put on our children, and we make them feel guilty for being the parts that we were never allowed to be. Do you see how that cycle can continue over generations until we are brave enough and conscious enough to break the cycle? I hope this has been helpful to you, and I will see you on the next episode of Parenting and You with me, Dr. Shefali. Parenting and You with Dr. Shefali is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional medical, psychological, psychotherapeutic, coaching, healthcare, or other qualified professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment.